Hey, what's going on, everybody? Stephen Morris here from the Gatling Group. I am the host of an Honest Look podcast. I'm actually here today with Justin Owens from Bon Appetit Restaurant here in Lexington, South Carolina. And we are here to basically talk about guilt tipping. An Honest Look podcast is a video podcast that we talk about things that the consumers and the public may have mixed emotions about. We want to debunk the myths. We want to talk about feelings. And we, more importantly, want to talk about facts.
I think if I see the tip line, I think that I'm supposed to be tipping because the line is there
Even
to fill in a tip.
Even if you've done all the work.
That's right.
Okay, got it. When it comes to good service, walk me through what your conventional tip amount is.
Oh, at least 20%.
At least 20%.
At least 20%.
Okay,
yeah.
Anytime that you don't tip at all, anytime where you say, you know what, I'm not tipping for this.
Only situations where it's just like a straight over-the-counter transaction, and if I don't see an option to leave a tip, then I'm not like trying to leave a tip if I'm not prompted.
Okay.
I mean, aside from a traditional like sit down at a restaurant, like where the server's actually being paid or compensated off tips.
Got it. Are we getting to a place where you feel like most consumers, especially the way the economy is going, are they at a place where they're just like, I'm tipped out? And then are they being desensitized to when they really do have good service?
Yeah, I mean, I can agree with that. There's definitely more services now that are asking for tips or where you see the tip option than you would traditionally see.
Okay.
I'm definitely leaving tips in places that I would not have left a tip at, like say 5 years ago, for example.
Correct.
Even my own business is service-based, and now QuickBooks defaults and gives you the option to leave a tip when you send an invoice.
Now, was that something that was implemented through you, or was that implemented through QuickBooks?
That was implemented through QuickBooks.
Okay.
So when I first started my company, every now and then we would get like a cash tip if the client was just super happy. Now it's actually on the invoice.
Wow, okay.
But it wasn't a change that I made. QuickBooks, it's just an added feature in the software. So even in my own business, and I would say it's about a 50% tip rate with my own client base. So I do think that the tip world has changed. I do find myself going into places like the ice cream example you gave where I leave the tip and then I leave and I'm like,
why did I
leave a tip?
Exactly.
But then on the flip side, I'll have people come to my home and provide a service.
Correct.
And then think when they leave, should I have tipped?
Right.
So it's really working both ways for me personally.
Got it. I ask you for a tip. That's called guilt tipping. Have you ever had a scenario like that?
Yes.
What do you do in those scenarios?
Not tip at all.
Okay, why not?
Because I did their job. Everyone thinks they're doing a great job, but they should learn to do their jobs better and help the customer versus just worrying about how they're getting tips.
When do you tip?
I tip when someone goes above and beyond what their normal job is.
Okay.
So if we're out to dinner and I never have to ask for a refill or they pay attention to us the whole time, good tip. If I have to ask you 16 times for a fork or a knife, not a good tip.
Okay, got it. So you are the true definition of tipping based on performance.
Yes.
Got it. And you're not going to tip just because the point of sale system is pushing you to do that.
Not at all.
In no scenario.
No scenario.
Thanks for your time, Chris.
No problem.
You got it.
If I see it as an option to tip, 90% of the time I'm a tip, even if it's like an over-the-counter service.
Okay, got it.
Tip.
So you feel guilty enough to where you have to tip.
Definitely.
What do you do for a living?
I am a chef.
Do you feel that because you're a chef in the hospitality industry, that's why you're tipping?
Definitely. I've been in it for over 15 years, and it's just being in that realm, I definitely feel like, you don't make as much money as everybody else, so a tip is always needed, and good service.
So you're tipping all the time. You're tipping when you got good service. You're tipping when you get your own coffee and you go to the checkout. You're going to tip.
I'm a tip.
I appreciate that, man. Thanks for your insight. You got it. Then they turn the POS system or the cash register around, and they say, would you like to answer this question? And that question 9 times out of 10 is what?
Would you like to leave a tip?
Why would you leave a tip in a scenario where you did all the work? That's called guilt tipping. How do you feel about that?
Ooh.
How do you feel about that?
I would say that I wouldn't tip because I did this service myself.
Correct. Okay, got it. Give me an instance of when you would tip.
If they went the extra mile.
Okay.
Let's say they had to grab some ingredient in the back that they didn't have, and they went the extra mile. Maybe they offered me something additional.
Okay.
Then I would definitely be willing to give a tip.
Are we getting to a place as Americans where we're tipped out, where we don't recognize what good service is anymore just because we're always tipped?
No, I don't agree. I'm in the service industry.
What do you do?
I own a full day spa and foot therapy.
Goodness. Okay, great.
And so I can appreciate, sometimes they feel like, well, they don't have to tip me because I'm the owner.
Right.
But if I provide a service, and client experience is key.
Okay.
So if you're coming into an ice cream place and they're giving you exceptional service, they go above and beyond, and they're friendly and they make you feel welcome, then that should be honored by the tip. I would say that the tips should go to the workers, not to the establishment. So I feel that if the establishment is setting those guidelines and rules, then maybe they can go on and do a Google review and get the name of that employee and do a shout out.
I like that.
That would be an alternative way of showing praise and recognition.
Would you tip in a scenario where you did all the work and they're asking for you to tip them?
No.
Why not?
Because I did all the work.
Exactly. Give me an example of when you would tip and what makes a good tipper.
If I went out to a restaurant and everything is done for me, all the services, I have to do nothing, I don't even lift a finger, then that would be an appropriate time to ask for a tip and to give a tip.
Do you feel most Americans are tipped out? Because since the pandemic, we're tipping the Uber driver, we're tipping the DoorDash, even on Starbucks.
I'm hoping that it will change. Okay. I do think that we've kind of reached that tipping point where it's gotten to be a little bit out of control and ridiculous. I mean, you got memes and videos and things like that are making fun of that. So I think we're getting there.
So in those scenarios, I always wonder if the public, here's my next question for you. Do you feel that Americans are at a point where they're tipped out? Because we are tipping way more now after COVID than what we were before COVID.
Oh, maybe.
So you're in the service industry. What do you do for a living?
I'm an esthetician.
An esthetician. Okay, so people usually tip you for your services.
Yeah.
When would you never tip? You say, you know what, this was horrible, I'm not leaving a tip for this service. When would you do that?
Never. I don't know.
Okay.
I feel like I always tip even still because sometimes.
Even if the service is bad?
Well, even in a restaurant, I've been a server in restaurants before, so I get sometimes it had nothing to do with the server, the cook sucked or the whatever, there's a whole line of people who messed up before it got to my fault.
Okay.
And so I get that. I kind of sympathize with them.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question that I didn't ask anyone else. What advice would you give to Americans today when they go out and they're looking for good service versus the guilt tipping? If you had to go out, if you had to really, now that you know what guilt tipping is, what would you tell Americans for our service industries like yourself and the restaurants and the air traffic control?
I feel like you shouldn't have any guilt if you provided the whole service yourself. But if you feel generous that day, then go for it. But if you don't want to, I feel like you shouldn't feel guilty. People sometimes don't tip me just because whatever, they don't feel
they may not have it.
Right, or they don't feel like it that day. I don't always take it. I don't take it personally.
Okay,
so.
Got it. I appreciate it. Thanks, Brandy. This is awesome. And so today, like I said, we're going to talk about guilt tipping. Many people don't know what that is. So we're going to address that today with Justin. Justin's been a good friend of mine for a very, very long time. Actually, you're probably one of the first people I met when I moved to South Carolina. And so I wanted to talk, Justin, about this term guilt tipping because we hear it all the time. You've owned a restaurant for how long now?
Well, we're 7 months at the new location.
Okay, congrats.
309 Oak Drive.
All right, I love the plug.
So, guilt tipping is the thing.
Okay, well, let's walk through your journey first because I want the people to know I got an expert on this. How long have you been in the hospitality industry?
Hospitality as a whole.
Or just service industry?
20 plus years.
Okay, got it. Walk me through your journey.
So I even worked for a company in the very beginning, Darden Restaurants.
Okay.
So Olive Garden, Red Lobster, some of those brands, they've actually, that's it.
Okay.
Very high service standards back then.
Okay.
Darden Dimes, charity, So great company to start with.
Okay.
But then throughout my career, multiple companies, I ended up here in Lexington at Trevini Italian Kitchen.
Got it.
Locally owned. They've been in business 16, 17 years now.
Okay.
And then last year I made the leap
to do it yourself.
To do it for myself.
Okay, good.
So we've been in business for 7 months and it's been wonderful. I love the community.
Okay.
So I want to support myself in the community by serving the community.
Cool,
that
man.
makes sense.
Cool.
But yeah, so I'm very privy to being a customer, but also being a proprietor as well.
Good.
So you see it from both angles.
Walk me through. I guess you've done everything when it's come to restaurants.
Serving,
dishwashing, the whole nine.
dishwashing,
Okay.
Fixing the toilet on a random Friday night. You have to do whatever it takes to make the guests happy.
Okay.
And so you full scope. I mean, there's nothing in a restaurant I have not done.
All right. So Justin, walk me through between the last 10 years. We're not going to go, because like I said, you've been in the industry for 20, but let's just go back. We're in 2014. What's changed with the dining experience from 2014 to right now?
Okay. So the biggest difference is we used to go out to restaurants as a family unit.
Okay.
For it was a celebratory act. At the end of a hard week, celebrating birthdays, anniversaries, it was truly a treat.
Okay.
Now we find that for a family of, let's say, 2, they can go out to eat and it's more economical than going grocery shopping.
Okay.
So now it becomes a matter of convenience.
Right.
So convenience and economics, when they line up, then of course, that means they frequent restaurants much more than they did before. And they have a lot wider selection available to them.
Right.
Because of that. So the frequency has increased. So, the options have been expanded. What that means is in our industry, we have people that are used to going to restaurants and they become accustomed to what to do and not to do in restaurants.
Okay.
Tipping is one of those things.
Okay.
And what levels of service to expect from different types. So fast casual.
Right.
Fine dining, just drop in.
Right.
Drop in and pick up. And then, of course, you have your curbside delivery,
right?
DoorDashes and different things like that.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's the biggest change is the frequency that we see our guests.
All right. So now so now in 2024, we're past COVID. We're past COVID. We're at a place where people are going out, like you said, more frequently. Right. And I will be honest with you. We did our first episode last week. We were talking about self-service kiosks, and I went to the grocery store this past Saturday with my daughter, and I spent $115 on 12 items.
That's it.
On 12 ketchup. This was so funny. I should have took a picture of it. Ketchup was $4.12 and mustard was 98 cents.
Correct.
Because most people are drinking ketchup.
What's the most used item?
Ketchup.
Exactly.
Ketchup. So I thought that was weird because, like I said, I usually don't look at the receipt, but now I'm going to start. So with that being the case, with food items being high, I get it. More people are going to restaurants. They're going out. Now let's talk about the experience, because in my brain, I think that tips and the way that I tip is usually commensurate to the service that I receive. Mm-hmm. I actually Googled what tip means. Tip means to ensure proper service or to ensure promptitude. Promptitude means that I'm assuring or I'm compensating based on attentiveness.
Correct.
So let's talk about this right now. So I know you probably have experiences where people don't know what to tip, even though a lot of times the suggestions are on the receipt. Mm-hmm. Walk me through an experience where someone did not tip or they tipped wrong. Let's talk about that first before we get into the guilt tipping portion. Walk me through something like that you've seen where you're like, hey, you know what? This person really did not understand what tipping means or why we tip.
Okay. So we tip based on the level of service.
Correct.
So the level of service is not indicative of how much you enjoyed the food that was on the plate.
Okay.
So if you go in a restaurant, and I'm going to use a worst case scenario,
right?
And you order a drink, you love the drink. You order a meal and you don't love the meal. And then the manager comes to the table and says, hey, we're so sorry you didn't enjoy that. We're going to comp that meal.
Okay.
Meaning we're going to take it off the bill. What they do is they leave the item on the bill, but it shows a zero balance for the item.
Correct.
It still shows you what that meal was worth.
Okay.
Okay. So now when you go to tip, you look at the total amount of the bill and you add in on your calculations that $24 for that meal. And then you customary 20% if the service was really good.
All right. So that is standard. 20% is the norm.
It's the norm.
That should be known.
That should be known.
Okay. So 20% is the norm. That is industry standard.
Industry standard.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
And so you're at that point, your server did everything they were supposed to do. They got you your drinks promptly.
Okay.
They alerted the manager that you did not like your meal.
Right.
And the manager then, of course, relinquished you from paying for that item because you didn't enjoy it.
Correct.
Unless you got a replacement or something like that.
Okay.
So at this point now, let's say our bill's $100.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We add the $24 for the meal that the manager took off, and then we tip 20% of the $124.
Correct.
Even though you didn't pay the $24.
Got it. Okay.
You see?
I see what you're talking about.
So that is how restaurant math works for restaurant people.
Okay.
Now, we understand everyone doesn't understand that. So if they leave 20% on 100, nobody's going to say anything the wiser.
Right.
However, what typically happens.
There we see. This is what I want to talk about. This is what the public. I want to know what the public's doing.
Yes. What typically happens is the customer is not satisfied with the meal, but the server didn't cook the meal.
Correct.
So you're unhappy with the establishment or the meal itself or the cook or whatever the case may be. So they then tip 10% of $100.
Okay.
So they didn't pay for the meal. The server did nothing wrong.
Right.
They provided that prompt service, which is the tip acronym.
Mm-hmm.
And the server was punished for it.
Got it.
So in their mind.
Right.
They're financially, of course they were.
Right.
But in their mind also. So then the next guest that they have that has a problem with the dish.
Right.
What is now their reaction?
Right.
So these are behaviors we have to train as managers or owners.
Right.
And things we had sometimes we have conversation with guests about it.
Okay.
But, so that is where tipping lies, worst case scenario.
Now, do you think that because are most restaurants, because I'm assuming most servers, they're dependent upon the tips to survive.
100%.
Now, my argument against that is that in other countries, because I did my research on this, matter of fact, in Denmark, China, Japan, Switzerland, tipping is seen as taboo because those countries, they give a livable wage. They give a living wage. And even in China, China has 1.4 billion people that are in that country. If you tip a server in China, they think they did a bad job.
Correct.
So are we just different as Americans, as Western civilization? Like, hey, I'm going to pay you what's the standard for a server now? $2.13 an hour or something like that?
In this state, different states have different laws.
Why that? Why can't we pay them a little bit more? And
so if we did,
right.
And I don't think it's necessarily wrong.
Okay.
I don't think there is a right or a wrong. I think there are differences of opinion and differences of economics. If we paid a server $10, $15, $17 an hour,
right,
the menu prices would increase
dramatically. Got it.
So as food costs increase and we increase menu prices, we are already getting the negative feedback as business owners.
Got it.
This was already too expensive, and now you made it more expensive.
Correct.
Well, when you go to the grocery store, the 99-cent
you're paying $4.98 for ketchup.
Exactly. Eggs were 99 cents. Now they're $4.99.
Yeah.
So we've already absorbed some of that cost, and sometimes the establishment is splitting the cost with the guest.
Okay.
They're lowering their profit margin so they can still make it quote unquote affordable.
Okay.
So if we factor in the labor cost, then at that point it is going to become, severely overpriced for most people to go out to eat. It'll just be prohibitive.
Right.
So that's where the balance lies. So there are states that pay their servers a livable wage, if you will.
Okay.
But if you compare those menu prices there and the menu prices here, you'll notice the drastic difference.
Got it.
Because the money has to come from somewhere. The restaurant industry is not a place where people make millions and millions of dollars like they are portrayed to.
Right.
The margins are very thin, and if you do everything right, you're still
barely skimming by.
Correct.
Okay.
People do this because they love it.
Got it.
They don't do it because they're trying to get rich.
Okay. So here, I love it because everything you're saying, I completely agree with. Whenever I take my wife out or I take my daughter out, I'm expecting the bill to be a certain amount, and I know I want to tip. And a lot of times, if you're a really good tipper, most tippers will do this. I will tip you before you even as you're sitting me down. I'll slide you $50 and say, hey, take care of me tonight. When you do that, you'll be amazed at the level of service you get.
It changes the level of service dramatically.
Boy, I learned that from my dad as a kid. I was like, man, they're so attentive to Mr. Morris. Matter of fact, they started calling him Mr. Morris.
They want to know your name.
Oh, yeah.
So if they see you before you sit down, that's my guy, Mr. Morris. Send him over to my section. They like you.
So I get that. Yeah. Here's where the guilt tipping comes in, and this is the topic of our episode today. Okay, I take my daughter out. I have an 11-year-old daughter. I take her out for ice cream, and there's a self-serve ice cream place in our town. I will grab the cup, you go to the different flavors, and I'll put French vanilla or cappuccino ice cream, chocolate vanilla, or whatever she likes. She always likes cookies and cream. Then we put the toppings on. So I'll put, cherries and crushed up Kit Kats and stuff like that. And then when I go to the register, because you have to go to the register, they have to actually weigh your item. Now, mind you, I did all the work. I got the cup. I put the ice cream in. Now, I know that they had to put the mix into the machine, whatever. But technically, I did everything from start to finish from the time I walked in.
You did.
All they did was weigh my ice cream, and then they will turn the point of sale system around. They will not ask you if you want to leave a tip. You already know where I'm going with this. Mm-hmm. They're going to ask you, do you want to answer this question? That's guilt tipping. What are your thoughts on that?
It should not be expected at all.
Okay. Can we get a clap, Scott? Can I get a clap for this? Thank you so much. Why do you say that?
So there is nothing the employee did that was outside of the scope of their job.
Okay.
When the server is serving you, there are a list of things that we know they're supposed to do.
Right.
If they're going to get anything above that industry standard amount,
yes,
it's because they did something exemplary.
Okay.
The employee who weighed your ice cream, they were supposed to weigh your ice cream.
Exactly.
They turned the register. They were supposed to ring up your sale. You're even participating in the sales process.
Correct.
I mean, you're managing the POS system at this point.
Exactly.
You are an employee.
Correct.
Or as what's the little meme says, you're an elite employee.
I'm an elite employee of the organization.
Elite employee. So I don't think it should be expected at all.
Okay.
I don't.
The Pew survey, this was kind of interesting. It says that quick service restaurants now are seeing a 22% increase in what they call guilt tipping. Mm-hmm. And so the guy, let's say I go to the donut shop and I just say, hey man, give me a black coffee. It doesn't really require you to do anything. You just put black coffee in a cup and you give it to me. But that guilt tipping has gone up and it has increased dramatically. And we see it in so many different avenues. Do you go to Starbucks?
No, I don't.
Okay, got it. Well, my wife and most ladies that are probably watching this episode, they go to Starbucks.
Does, so I take her to Starbucks.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Starbucks, I kind of get this because a barista has to actually prepare your drink. And with these lattes and everything, you got venti latte. Oh, I want a hint of almond milk or a hint of oat milk. I get it. It will ask you for a tip. But they also have a tip jar that's outside the drive-thru that if you're a devious person, people will try to take that out. Starbucks, by the way, can we pause? Starbucks, please take your tip jars off the drive-thru because people will steal that. But anyway, notice Starbucks will ask you for a tip. McDonald's won't. Chick-fil-A won't. And so here's my question to you, Justin. Are we becoming a country of consumers that are just going to be tipped out after a while? Like
100%. Mm-hmm. So the reason that we have issues in the service industry on our side, so sit-down restaurant service, mm-hmm. is because now tipping has been made.
Has it lost its effectiveness?
It has.
Okay.
It's too widespread.
Okay.
So like now we don't know when we should tip.
Right.
I think that's the problem. So if the guy washes your car and he does an amazing job, slip him a 20.
Right.
If the young lady in Target walks you all the way through the store to help you find this one item for your child during Christmas, give her a couple bucks.
People don't do that though.
Right.
We don't tip retail. We don't tip retail at all.
Which is why there's a lot less retail workers
mm-hmm.
now. So
wow.
If that happens in the restaurant business, you will notice that there'll be a lot less people working
there.
Exactly. And so there'll be a lot more self-service kiosks, even at sit-down restaurants.
Okay.
You've noticed that at some restaurants, they have a little tablet.
Yeah. Red Robin does it. Yep. They have it to where the tablet sits on the table, but it still asks for a tip. It still asks for a tip, man. Like tipping has increased astronomically. I'm going to go over some different tipping industries and you tell me yes or no. You ready?
Got it.
All right. So we mentioned about the ice cream place. You said no. If I got to do everything myself, I'm not tipping you. How about vacation? When you go on vacation and the doorman helps you to your room, brings your luggage up. We tip it on that, right?
You're going to pass him 10 or 12 times a day?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, got it. What about the postal worker at Christmas time?
Leave them a drink and a snack. It'll go a lot longer.
Are you serious?
100%.
Really?
100%.
Okay.
They love snack bags. Everyone at the FedEx, UPS, USPS, love it.
Okay. Mm-hmm. How about the Uber driver or the taxi driver?
Phenomenal service, absolutely.
Okay. What about the DoorDash delivery person? Because DoorDash and a lot of these delivery services, they made a buttload of money. I mean, you're talking about within the last 4 years, DoorDash, Uber Eats, and Grubhub, they don't provide any product or service.
No.
Well, sorry, they don't provide any product, or the service they provide is delivering it. Mm-hmm. But their tips have increased dramatically. Mm-hmm. And honestly, all they did was bring in food. Now, here's my thing. I will tip based on how lazy I am that day. Because if I'm lazy enough to not get in my car and drive to get the food, I'm like, okay, a gallon of gas is what, $3-4? You know, well, a gallon of gas is like $3.09 in South Carolina. But I tip according to 2 gallons of my gas. Is that pretty sufficient, or is
I think that's sufficient.
Okay. I don't want to be cheap.
I think the reason that the tips are so high with DoorDash and Grubhub and all those people,
okay,
is because people are concerned about the person delivering their food.
Correct.
So they go, well, you know what? If I'm a good tipper, and they know there's records of this, like the drivers can see your score.
Oh, I didn't know that. Listen, okay.
Everyone collects data.
You're right about that.
You're not.
You're right.
Just because you fill out the little profile, that's not all that follows you. You know, did you cancel any orders? Are you a frequent person that cancels orders?
Right.
Do you put orders in? Do you frequently have problems with your orders? Like
all that is, and they see that.
They see that.
Wow. So can they pick and choose whether or not they want to deliver to me? I didn't know that.
You ever try to?
I didn't know that,
try
bro.
to book an Uber? Well, it may not have happened to you because you probably follow protocol.
Yeah.
But some people try to book an Uber and then they notice that all the drivers in the area decline their ride. It happens.
Wow.
So people consciously go, and I know this because I'm in the industry. Mm-hmm. I say, hey, listen, anytime I order Instacart or whatever the case may be, it's $10 on the app.
Right.
$10 on the app. I need you to,
okay.
I'm a good customer.
Okay.
So whenever
So there's a psychological stigma against people that don't tip. And I can see that because people that don't tip, especially at a restaurant, they're like when you walk out, you're like, man, that person was real cheap or he was real stingy. Is the psychological aspect the other way around? Like, let's say, for instance, I do get bad service because we know that there are times that happens. I went to a restaurant with my family. They brought a hot plate out and it burnt my daughter. The young server, I was like, hey, can you get the manager? Well, number one, the part that really ticked me off was when my daughter got burnt is I didn't know how hot those overhead lights are when you're waiting for, so our food was waiting for a while. Number one, our food had been sitting there for a long, long time. When he brought it out, it wasn't hot on his end. So when he grabbed it, it was fine. When he gave it to my daughter, it burnt her. I asked him, I said, hey, can you go talk to the manager? Can I just kind of talk and say, hey, this is what happened? He wasn't even sensitive enough to get her an ice pack.
So empathize.
He didn't have any empathy whatsoever. Now, here's the thing. So we're eating. My wife is hot because this is our baby. She's hot. She can barely eat her food. She's upset. The guy never came to check on us after that because he probably didn't know what he said. He was 18. He probably didn't know what to say. But when time came for us to give the check, all of a sudden he started pumping up and, oh, hey, everything's okay. And my mother-in-law, she was like, you better not tip him. Was she right in that scenario or not?
100%.
Really?
100%.
That's good to hear.
So, and this has happened to me in my own place.
Okay.
There was a guest that I told specifically not to tip the server.
Okay.
Because it wasn't an instance just like that, but that one is very indicative of their job is not to fix the problem.
Right.
Their job is to come find me or someone like me.
Correct.
To come fix the problem. All they need to do, and I tell them this in the orientation, all it needs you to do is wave the red flag.
Right.
Hey, there's a problem here, and then we will come solve it. A lot of times, most of the negative issues that I've dealt with in my own place or the place before now, it was a server, a young man, who did not notify us. They may have even told the guest they notified us, and they didn't.
Right.
And so
that happened because because with this particular situation, I knew the owner. So I got up, found the owner. I said, hey, he goes, what are you talking about? He had no knowledge. And so when I went back to the table, my wife's like, did he know? And I'm like, no. And it just ended up being a really bad experience. So back to what I was saying, when you have a bad experience like that, are we as consumers not wrong for not tipping?
No, you're not.
Okay.
I will say this. There's no need for the little nasty note, though.
So they do that all that. That's what ends up on the news.
Yeah, so here's the thing: the level of tip based on the level of service you felt. That's enough. That sends the message.
Right.
A lot of times what people will do is they'll write a little nasty note. And what that then does is that gives the server some, I don't know, verification that you're just like not a nice person.
Right.
Just leave them the $5 and move on with it.
Okay.
You know?
All right, let's go to the next one. I'm going to go over some industries that I didn't know required tips.
Okay.
Matter of fact, I'm going to name the top 10 and you tell me which ones raise a red flag. Ready? Number 1, of course, restaurants. We already just talked about it. Our servers and our wait staff. Bars.
Yes, of course.
All right. Baristas. That's number 3.
Mm-hmm, sure.
Number 4 is hotels, housekeeping, and concierge. I don't tip for that.
Listen.
I feel so guilty.
Listen. Listen, here's the thing. If you're on a one-night stay,
okay,
I would say you're safe. If you're on a multiple night stay at the same property.
Like, what's a multiple night? 2 nights?
If you're going to leave your belongings in a room.
Facts. I didn't even think about that.
I would leave something on the
nightstand. Got it.
That's just me.
I fall in that area.
Me. Unless you're going to take everything and haul it to the car. Because here's the thing. Those people are in and out of the room. And most of them, nothing bad would ever happen.
Right.
But however, let's just.
Now, how do you leave a tip I mean, I'm assuming you just give it to them in their hands. Because if you leave it in the room, and they take it, that could be seen as theft.
I'll leave it in the room. I might put a little sticky. They normally have
a note.
They have a note and a pen, and I'll leave a note for them.
Okay, got it. All right, number 4, taxi services. We talked about that. Rideshare services is number 5. Salons. I'm bald headed, so I haven't been to a barbershop in a long time.
My barber is one of my favorite people.
Okay, got it.
Absolutely.
Okay, make sure we tip them. Now, I know the cost of haircuts have gone up tremendously, but still tip. Spas, massage therapists, and spa staff.
I would.
Okay.
They're touching your body.
Correct.
You know,
this one threw me for a loop. Number 9, personal trainers at the gym.
So I haven't used one, and I don't know the answer to that. I don't know.
Okay. The ones I'm about to say now are past the number 10, but they're still in the top 30. I put question marks by these. Concert and entertainment venues. So like when the ushers and the coat check people, I mean, I don't know if people really tip that for concerts and stuff. Because I think a lot of times when you go to a concert, if you're in like a skybox or something, you kind of feel like I paid this amount in the ticket. I'm not going to tip for this.
I mean, I think so as well. There may be a scenario where you should tip.
Okay.
It just hasn't happened to me yet.
Okay. I'll give you 3 more that were kind of like wishy-washy for me. Food trucks.
Absolutely.
Really?
Listen.
Okay. Walk me through it. Help me. Help the public.
If you could take a restaurant and just smush it all into the smallest space you can imagine.
Okay.
So you still have all the heat.
Right.
You still have no air conditioning.
Okay.
Inclement weather. If it's hot or cold, whatever the case may be. And then that person still is able to put some food in your hands with that love and that care.
Right.
And it tastes wonderful. Some of the best food I've ever had has come out of
Oh, yes. I agree with you.
But
most people don't tip food trucks. They look at it as like a fast food experience. I'm going to be honest with you.
If you can go to McDonald's and pay $15.
Right. But you're not tipping at McDonald's.
But you're not tipping at McDonald's. But we remember the quality of food they serve.
Correct.
And then you can go
unless McDonald's is sponsoring my podcast. I'm just kidding. I'm loving it.
So, but there's a person back there, just one, normally maybe 2, or it's a family-owned operation or whatever the case may be. Listen, for $15, you then got a quality, aspect, $30 meal. I mean, I think. So.
All right. I'll do better. Skycaps and airport shuttle drivers are on this list.
That depends on if they got the charisma and they're having depends on how people. Here's the thing.
Okay.
We can cut through all of the industries. If I feel
I got one more, by the way, but go ahead.
Okay, well, give me the one more before I give you this, because this should be a close.
You're a tattoo artist.
I don't have any.
Neither do I, but they said that. But I can see that's on the level of.
I think it probably could be.
But that's on the level of your barber.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Listen,
okay.
If he makes me, so this is that last point. If after my interaction with you, where you provided me with a service and I feel exponentially better,
right,
I'm going to reach in my pocket and give you something.
Got it.
Because it's the feeling that.
So here's my thing. So I love your sentiment, and I think more people should have it. And I think you have that sentiment because you have a server's heart. That's just what it is. You see the struggle that people go through every single day to try to survive within a 24-hour time span just to make a living to feed their family. You get that because you've seen it from that. Why are most consumers against leaving really good tips? Why do you think that is? Is it because of the economy? Is it because they're just not naturally known to know this information that you're giving out today? Why do you think that 70%, this is a statistic, 70% of consumers don't like to tip and don't tip very well?
One word: entitlement.
Okay.
We feel as if we are entitled to all of these things. We've been made to feel that way.
Okay.
And it's not your fault, my fault, their fault. It's no one's fault. It's just how we feel.
Okay.
And so, again, we are looking at things from one human being to another. Did this other human being improve my quality of life today?
Okay.
And if they did that, in my heart, I would like to give you something.
Okay.
That's just the end of it.
Okay.
You know, if you keep it simple, that's the best way. It may be a servant's heart. It may be just being in service to people.
Right.
But again, I feel like if after our interaction, I feel better and you provided me with a service, then you may be entitled to some type of compensation.
Okay.
Just like those commercials they have on TV.
No. Exactly.
That's just the way it works.
It's just so funny because most people don't like tipping, but the numbers don't lie either. Tipping has increased.
It does.
All around.
Yes.
And like I said, I get it on the service aspect. We talked about the ice cream scenario. And it's also almost psychological in some aspect as well. I talked to one lady and she says the reason why she says I tip all the time, even if it's $1. Like if I gave her the scenario with the black coffee. I was like, hey, somebody came, they just gave you a black coffee. Do you tip on that? She goes, yes. I talked to 2 different women. The one that said yes, she says, I feel guilty not because the person's looking at me right in my face. And then on the screen, on most point of sale systems, especially if they turn it around or if it's a 2-sided POS, it gives you options. And that's the psychological part of guilt tipping that people feel guilty about because it's almost like a multiple choice. I got to pick something. And so that's why I think our numbers have gone up. But people overall are disgruntled because here's the next question that they're going to ask. In a scenario that's not fine dining restaurant, in a scenario that's not a waitress or a server serving me, let's say it's just a group of staff of people, where does that tip money go? Does that tip money get split amongst everyone?
So that is my problem, and I hate.
Oh, come on now!
I'm not calling out
let's get into it.
Just a real life.
This is an honest look.
I took my son to Subway's where he wanted to go. My choice.
Okay. You don't like Subway?
Jersey Mike's.
Oh, okay. Jersey Mike's.
Jersey Mike's. But we went to Subway, and the young lady told me, I was pressing the buttons on the screen. She goes, don't give me a tip. Because she did provide excellent service. I mean, it's my son. He's 10 ordering a sub.
Right.
Takes a while.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, she's patient with him.
So I said, she goes, don't do that. That money does not come to me.
Whoa.
And I go, well, where does it go? She goes, she does one of these numbers.
Ooh.
So I go, okay, that's a no.
Interesting fun fact.
I go back to the car because this is a Subway that's in a gas station. I never have any cash. So I go back to the car.
You are a good man.
I had $20.
You are a good man.
I went and bought a pack of gum with
and then gave her some of the change.
I could give her the change.
Wow.
Because she did deserve the tip.
Right.
I don't know where that money goes. So again, that is another problem.
Okay.
Does the money go directly to the person?
How does the public know that? Because the public is under the impression that it does. Yes. If that young lady would have never told you not to press no,
I would have felt good about that.
You would have been like, oh, wow, I did a great thing.
So that's a deception. I strongly believe that if you want to absolutely 100% know that the tip goes to the person that's intended,
right?
You need to tip in cash. But like
Scott, I'm losing him again.
But like me,
okay,
I don't typically carry cash, so that is kind of a
right.
We hope that people do the right thing when nobody's looking.
Okay. That actually is true. Okay, so one of the other things I wanted to talk to you about, because in restaurants now we see a lot of auto gratuity. A certain amount is billed to your tab or billed to your check, and then they automatically. I know sometimes 6 parties or more. Walk me through how you guys do it at Bon Appetit.
So we used to, industry standard wise, say, if you have a certain number of people, we will automatically apply gratuity to your check. That may or may not work in every situation. You know, there may be a table of 5 that cannot sit in a regular seating arrangement, and it causes other problems. You have to move them around. Whatever happens, the number of people that is not the greatest indicator.
Okay.
So the total amount of the check is.
Okay.
So in our restaurant, instead of a number of people, it's a dollar amount.
Okay.
So we say any tab over $100 has an automatic gratuity of 18%, which is 2%
less than the standard.
Than industry standard. Okay. Applied to your check. There's no this person or that group. It's just straight across the board.
Right.
And that way it's fair. And then for those people that are under 100, you know, they can tip more or less. We find that most of the people that notice that gratuity is on the menu, so it's clearly labeled, it's on the receipt, clearly labeled.
Correct.
They look at that and they go, all right, well, here's $2 or $3 more on top of the 18%. So they get the 20%. That's most people.
Correct.
There are a few people that go, oh, they charge automatic gratuity. We're never coming back here again. Well, here's the deal. Normally, and I mean this with no disrespect,
right?
Those are the people that will run a tab for $100, $200 for whatever service, and then leave the server $5 after they consume that space for 2.5 hours sometimes.
So is it ignorance or just people are just that cheap?
It's not cheap. I never use the term cheap.
Okay.
I never use the term cheap.
Lackluster giving. Whatever you want to call it.
It's truly lack of knowledge.
Okay.
Like there is a dollar amount per head for every person that walks in a restaurant, no matter what type of restaurant. There is a dollar amount for the longevity of time that you stay in that spot.
Right.
So if you one person sit in one spot in a restaurant for 2.5 hours, there's a dollar amount that's associated with that for the server.
Correct.
So either you're helping them make that number or you're keeping them from making that number.
Got it.
And so your goal is to tip to accommodate for the difference.
Now the 100 you said it's 18% on $100 and above.
Oh, correct.
Because you guys have some margarita thing going on. What's that?
Listen, so there's a margarita tower, and we happen to be one of the very lucky few here. In
this is free advertising, by the way. Matter of fact, this podcast is sponsored by Bon Appetit.
That's it.
Go ahead, get your advertising on.
But I'll tell you, so these Patron margarita towers. I mean, this young lady came in. She was a social media influencer. We didn't know who she was.
Okay,
she was just having a good time. I only said hello to her. Most of the time I sit down and talk to people. And
you gave great service.
I just said, hey, how are you doing? She said, everything's great. That was all I needed to know. Her and her husband were having a great time. She posted that margarita tower.
Wow.
And we, overnight.
Really?
It went from 1 or 2 margarita towers every other day to 5 to 10 margarita towers a day.
That's what's, man, that is awesome, man.
Buffy Lewis.
That's her name? Shout out to Buffy Lewis.
Shout out to Buffy Lewis.
Awesome.
And so, again, margarita towers, they're $55.
Okay.
Most people end up with 2 of them in a group of 4.
110 right there.
That's 110. And then they occupy the space because it takes a while to drink those things.
Correct.
For, let's say it's 2 hours,
right.
2.5 hours. So if they come in and they order 2 of those and a couple appetizers and they have a $150 bill, and they leave $10.
Right.
You know, your server is
like, what the heck?
What's going on?
I got you.
We just made it standard across the board.
Okay, got it, man. Okay. Justin, I appreciate it, man. This was awesome sitting down talking with you, man. You are a good friend of mine, and I'm so happy that you decided to be on an Honest Look podcast. We're going to talk to the public, and we're going to get their insight, and I learned a lot today. See, that's the reason why I wanted to do this podcast, because I never claimed to be an expert on all items. I'm not.
Neither am I.
None of us are. But when we talk about these issues out loud, my intent is hopefully that it'll help someone. Because you did mention situations where we should not tip.
Correct.
I heard it out of your mouth. But when we get great service and to ensure promptitude, when somebody gives us that human experience, dig in your pockets to help them out.
Absolutely.
My name is Stephen Morris, episode 2 of An Honest Look. We appreciate each and every one of you. Like I always say, make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, and We want to hear from you in the comment section. If you guys have topics that you want us to take an honest look at, we're going to look at it from both sides. The good, the bad, the ugly. We're going to look at how you feel about the situation. But the main thing is we want to debunk the myths, because a lot of times people feel certain ways based on how they feel. And we all know our feelings are not facts. Last thing, Justin, tell the people how they can get in contact with you at Bon Appetit.
Listen,
any social media tags?
Listen, Bon Appetit, BONE-APPETITE. lex.com. That's our website. It's also our Instagram tag. What is it? TikTok? YouTube?
I don't know.
It's across the board.
I do Face Talk or something like that.
Yeah.
Face Talk. They still do. What's the name of the other one? I think I probably still do have a MySpace page.
Music on yours?
Yeah, I changed the background page. Thanks for coming tonight, man. I appreciate it, man.
Pleasure.
You got it. Let's hear what the public has to say.